Welcome back for part two. I'll share my screen and let's keep going here. So, chapter 16 really deals with, I guess, everything psychology. I'm not a trained psychologist, I'm a trained exercise physiologist, dietitian, but not a psychologist. Having said that, we can't overlook psychology. And so let's address some of these things. The first concept I want to bring up is this notion of a food addiction. This is important to me because this program hinges on you understanding that you are in control. You have the power to make changes in your life. And if we state that we're addicted to food, we start to shift the locus of control. So meaning your feelings that you have an ability to change, we shift it away from us to somebody else. It's not my fault. I'm just addicted. Versus no, I have control. But let's talk about why we say this. The concept of food addiction was reported as early as 1956. Okay, now it's become essentially everyone feels like this is factual, mainly because we have these neuron imaging techniques where we can give certain foods to people, and we see that there's different areas of the brain. My pen's not pointing for me. Certain areas. Oh man, I'm sorry, guys. I'm trying to get my pen to draw for me. There we go. Certain areas of the brain are highlighted to a very high degree, signifying that dopamine is being released. And this is very similar to what we may see with drugs. And so because we see this, people say, oh my goodness, we're addicted to sugar, which is really what we're saying, just like we are with drugs. And then when we look at the rat research, there's really good evidence that rats can be addicted to things. This is probably the best study. What they did is they put these rats in this rat maze. And at the end of the rat maze, there's two places where the rat can put its little paw. I don't even know if a rat has a paw, whatever that is, claw or whatever. The rat can put his little paw, and he has two places he can get food. One place, it gives the rat its normal chow, its normal food. The other place where he puts his paw down a lever, it will give him an M&M. But the lever also shocks him. So they put the rats in these mazes, and they went through the maze. They'd go to the end, and the rat would find out that he'd get M&Ms. So he'd get an M&M, he'd get shocked. The researcher would put the rat back in the beginning. They'd go through the maze, and guess what? They didn't care. They got shocked again to get the M&M. But every time the rat came back, the shock actually got worse. So they shocked him harder and harder and harder. So what they were trying to do, if someone's addicted to drugs, we know that they will do a lot of actions, even though there's negative consequences. So what these authors were doing is they were trying to see if rats would continue to eat sugar in response to a negative consequence. And they did this with rats that were binge eating rats. So rats that were bred to be binge eaters. And they also did this with rats who were non-binge eating rats. And what they found is, so here's the number of M&Ms that the number of times they went back to get an M&M. And as we go farther on the x-axis to the right, the level of shock got higher. And then the black bar represents our binge eating rats. Those rats that were binge eaters, they went back for more M&Ms and they tolerated higher shocks, suggesting that there was such a strong pull to get that M&M that they didn't care that they were getting the crap shocked out of them. The main finding of the study was that rats classified as binge eating prone not only consumed more of this food, but were willing to tolerate a higher level of shock. And this was observed in the rats despite they were satiated, meaning they weren't hungry and they could have gotten normal shock without a shock, normal chow without a shock, but they did it anyways. In rats, there's a lot of good evidence that you can be addicted to sugar. We are not rats. A human brain is much more complex than a little pea-sized brain of a rat. And so when we look at human data, there's not a consensus that we're addicted to sugar. Don't get me wrong, we might love sugar. I like a brownie. It doesn't mean I'm addicted to it. And it's funny to me that people will say this on the news. Oh, they are addicted just like they'd be addicted to crack cocaine. That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. If we were addicted to sugar like we were to crack cocaine, why wouldn't we have teenagers going and stealing Wonder Bread off of the wall or off of the store shelves to fit their cravings, or go home and just handfuls of sugar out of the sugar jar? That's what we do if we're addicted to drugs, and we don't do that. There's a lot of differences. Here's a summary of that article highlighting why it's not the same thing. If physical addiction plays a role in the consumption of sugar, then various phenomena associated with addiction, for example, cravings and tolerance, would be predicted. And it's not. Meaning, if you're addicted to alcohol, you develop a tolerance, and then if you remove it, you get withdrawal-like symptoms. We don't see that with sugar. Most people experience food cravings at one time or another, meaning we have to eat food to live. So our body has built biological mechanisms to make us crave food because we need the nutrients. That's not the same with drugs. And when we get these cravings, most commonly they are foods that are high fat or contain a mixture of fat and sugar. If I go all day without eating and I go home and I'm hungry, what am I going to eat? I'm going to eat whatever's there. I don't care if it's only sugar, suggesting I'm not addicted just to sugar. We also know that fasting actually leads to a decline in cravings, not an increase. So that goes against it. We also know that cravings occur more later in the day. Well, if you're a smoker, when are you most wanting a cigarette? First thing in the morning when you wake up because you haven't had nicotine for a while. When are people more likely to binge and crave foods? Later in the day. So that doesn't work either. We know that food cravings, particularly for chocolate, occur more towards the end of a menstrual cycle. Menstrual cycle doesn't have anything to do with drug abuse. We know that exposure to sweet tastes may increase food preferences, but the phenomena is associated with a particular form of food. So that's a little bit different. We also know that children like intensely sweet tastes, but the preference actually declines. Well, that doesn't work if you're addicted to any drug, it doesn't decline. And so there's a lot of reasons that no, we're not addicted like we are to drugs. The reason I think this is important is because the use of the term food addiction can cause problems. I'm going to compare it to when we determined obesity was a disease. When researchers exposed people to an ad campaign saying obesity was a disease, they reported less concern for their health and they made less healthy choices. Why? Because it caused a shift of their locus control, meaning instead of, obesity is a disease, I don't have any control over this now. Dadgum, and I'm stuck with it. If we say you're addicted to sugar, I don't have any control, I just have to put it in my mouth. No, you do have control. You are in charge. Don't shift the focus to somebody else. It's you. Now, having said that, we do know that there are certain foods that are more problematic, meaning there's not good data to say I am addicted to sugar like I am a drug. But we do know that there's certain foods that are more likely to be binged upon. These researchers wanted to see what those foods were, and they found some interesting findings. So this is ranked from 1 to 35. 1 is the most likely food that people binged on, and these were college students. So chocolate was number 1. Let's notice a few things. The first 15 items that you were most likely to binge on were processed foods. Processed foods. The items on the bottom, cucumbers, who's binging on cucumbers and carrots? Obviously, that's not a binge food. But they're processed foods, foods that we have processed to make very good. I want you to do something for me. Think in your mind of any naturally occurring food that is very high fat and high sugar. A naturally occurring food, not one that you make, one from the environment, that is both high fat and high sugar. Can you think of any? I've thought hard on this, and I think coconuts might fit that, but I can't think of much more. I say that because almost all of these foods on the first 15 are high fat and high sugar. You see, we have processed foods and we've made them unnatural. We've made them very high fat and high sugar, and they're very palatable, and we love them. These are problematic foods. You shouldn't have them in your house. If you're trying to lose weight, why in the world would you have cookies, chocolate cake, muffins, breakfast cereal, gummy candies, fried chicken, soda? Why would you have those in your house? You're setting yourself up for a binge session. So that might be a goal. Go through your pantries and get rid of those things. Okay, so you can't be addicted to sugar. At least you can't be addicted to sugar like you are a drug. Now, let's talk about some psychological variables that predict weight loss success. I'm going somewhere with these variables. Okay. So impulsivity is a hasty reaction to an outside stimulus without concern for negative consequences. If you're more impulsive, you're more likely to binge eat and overeat. If we were to break down what that means to be impulsive, we really have these four sub facets: a sense of urgency. Think about this and relate it to you. I come home from work and I'm starving. I'm urgent. I'm just going to eat whatever is right there. I have to do it right now. Lack of premeditation. I haven't thought about what I'm going to eat for dinner, so I'm just going to eat whatever's there. A lack of perseverance. I know I said I was going to eat good, but screw it. I'm hungry. Sensation seeking. Oh, I just really want the taste of that salty, I don't know, whatever, chip and dip or something, right? This is impulsivity, and this leads to overeating. Those who have been diagnosed with an eating disorder have more impulsive behaviors and than those who do not. So we want to move away from these things. And what do we move to? Another study that wanted to look at the what psychological variable predicts weight loss. What they found was the number one variable that predicted weight loss success is simply dietary restraint. This is a no-duh. This is a no-brainer. All we're saying is, are you restraining what you should be putting in your mouth? Are you practicing restraint? Oh, there's a plate of Oreos there. Dietary restraint says, I can't eat Oreos. Someone who's impulsive says, oh my goodness, that probably tastes so good, so I must eat them now. I haven't thought about what I'm going to do in this situation, and screw what I said I was going to do. I'm just going to eat them. That's an impulsive mindset. Dietary restraint is the opposite. You've made goals to restrain what you're going to put in your mouth. But here's the problem. Dietary restraint, although obviously you must restrain yourself from just shoving everything in your face, it's what we call a double-edged sword. The reason why is, in an obesogenic environment is just an environment that promotes obesity, where there's a lot of food everywhere and it's really good, right? In an environment such as that, which is where we live, dietary restraint wanes, meaning you can only not eat certain foods for so long. Dietary restraint is the number one predictor of binge eating. The number one predictor. So think about what we're saying here. You must practice some restraint. Obviously, we can't put everything in our mouth. But if I over practice this restraint, I'm going to binge. And the reason why is because of what we call an abstinence violation effect. What the abstinence violation effect is it's an all or nothing mentality. This is the average dieter. And most people feel like, well, that's what I have to do. It's either all or nothing. Bullcrap. That's why you haven't kept your weight off. What this diet is, or what this mindset is where you told yourself, man, Oreos, I just keep bringing up Oreos because they're amazing. Oreos are so good. I will never eat an Oreo again. It's really bad for me. And then you go to a party and there's a thing of Oreos. And you give in and you just have one Oreo and then you feel horrible about yourself. Man, I violated my abstinence to Oreos. I said, well, since I already broke my diet, I'll just eat the whole bag of Oreos. That's what we do. That's what we do. We've got to move away from that. So to help us know how to balance restraint and not be impulsive, there is an eating program, which I believe in, called mindfulness-based eating. Mindfulness-based eating. Traditional diet programs are effective only for short term, but they are not as effective for long term. They don't provide any flexibility or opportunities to relearn adaptive habits. And so we need a program that allows for this. Mindfulness-based eating is built on the concept of the self-regulation theory. What this theory means is that I can internally acknowledge and regulate my bodily processes. And by observing them, I can redirect how I respond. I can take this complex system and re-regulate the way that I respond to it. The goal of mindfulness-based eating is to re-regulate the balance between physiological factors and non-nutritive factors that drive eating. Meaning, I have physiological reasons to eat, I'm hungry. But I have non-nutritive factors too. I'm bored, I'm out with my friends. Those are non-nutritive, and we need a balance. This is also supposed to break this cycle of, okay, I will never eat that Oreo again. But then I'm at the party and I'm going to binge. Oh, I feel really bad about me binging. All right, you know what? I'm going to do it again. I'm never going to do this again. And that leads to over restraint, which leads to binging. And we have this. This is a cycle that does not work. Well, I mean, the cycle happens, but when we follow diets that create this cycle, you will never be successful. This program is designed to cultivate awareness of internal, external cues that drive you to eat. It's supposed to interrupt this cycle of binging, self-recrimination, overrestraint, and to re-engage the natural physiological processes of eating. Eating is supposed to be enjoyable. When people are on a diet and they always hate eating, they're not going to stick to that diet. The program emphasizes the pleasure and nurturing aspects of eating. So this is something that you need to practice, this concept of mindfulness-based eating. How do you do that? Well, I have incorporated activities into your 24-hour weight loss planner. One activity a week. And the idea is that you practice the single activity all week and you become a mindfulness eater. Let me give you an example of activity 1 so you kind of see the point of this. The goal of these activities is to train the mind so that all eating occasions become mindful, meaning you're thinking intently about the food and focus is being shifted from quantity to quality. Before the activity, you should start with breath awareness and sitting meditation. Again, you want to be mindful. Breath awareness and sitting meditation are encouraged to be practiced daily, initially for 10 and then 20 minutes. And I gave you some techniques for breathing awareness that you can look at. So you start to put yourself in this aware state, and then you take raisins. This challenge introduces you to the idea of focusing on the eating experience. Participants generally share amazement at the intensity of the experience, the distinctness of each raisin, and awareness of how the experience differs from mindlessly eating a handful of raisins. So complete this activity a few times a week. So take 3 raisins. You're going to eat one at a time. You just put one in your mouth. Place the first raisin in your mouth. Don't chew it immediately. Take time to taste and savor it. Pace yourself. Notice the texture of the raisin. Then you do the other raisins. Do they differ in texture, taste, size? And then you're going to journal on how this felt. The point of this activity isn't to see if you like raisins. It's to identify how the eating experience is different. I love watching football. My oldest son and I can sit down and watch games all day. And what makes it better to have a bag of chips in my lap? But I can watch a whole game of college football and eat that whole bag of chips and not even enjoy eating the chip. It was just automation. It just went in my mouth. That's mindless eating. That's overeating. I didn't even enjoy it. We need to move away from that. This is supposed to help us do that, to move away from that. And so practice these activities, take them seriously. If you don't deal with the psyche, then you're not going to deal with long-term weight loss. All right, we're going to do one more part of this module. So I'm going to stop this and we will start part 3.